Alright. Hello, everyone out there. This is David Swank from the D Swank channel, and we have.
The game. How y'all do?
And welcome back to the podcast that we're putting together called the Not Magrathea podcast, where we're discussing world building and things of that for creative pursuits, creative fiction sort of stuff. Yay. So, what's our topic for today?
Myths, legends, gods, pantheons, all that lovely stuff that can define the religions and otherwise beliefs of your world.
Mm. So, one of the things that, as soon as we were discussing formatting this and we brought up the idea of myths and legends, something that popped in my head, and I want to read the first paragraph. It's the same thing out of every, in the beginning of every book of the Wheel of Time series. And I just noticed my web camera reverses things. Okay, so I'll need to flip that. But it's from the Wheel of Time, but it's the Wheel of Time turns, ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend, then fade to myth, and are long forgotten when the age comes again. So, the idea of truths evolving into myths and then legends is really kind of a strong thing for world building. Um, Again, in Wheel of Time, they have little throwaway lines that are things about Neil, who rode to the moon in the belly of a steel eagle, and two giants that named Merc and Mosk that waged war with lances of fire. And I thought it was kind of a fun little, I guess, twist on a lot of stuff. Oh, there was also Queen Elspeth, Queen of All. So kind of nods to modern times in that, but Wheel of Time is kind of a secular um, mythology where eventually things circle back around, people are reborn, the story is different but the same. So, I kind of liked it. But that ties into our myths, legends, religion, and our first talking point, which is what's true and what isn't.
Yeah.
So, you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah, the what's true and what isn't. God, there's so much that could happen in your world that can be truthful, no matter how strange or weird it sounds. Or it could be absolutely fake and sound as believable as you want it to be. Uh, Take, for instance, gods. In my world, most gods don't exist, even though um, people believe they do. And it doesn't matter if they actually exist or not, because their religions will still have strong influences. The same thing with your heroes and legends. Uh, you could have a person who has done something of great importance, but it can be blown so far out of proportion that they become near godlike in themselves. And of
Uh,
course, the hidden truth of it all being he was just a guy who pushed a button. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you bringing that up reminds me of the 1776 musical. At one point, when they're fighting over uh, who would be free, and they're trying to give birth to the country, and if they don't wipe out the clause that was in the Declaration of Independence about slavery, the South walks. And Franklin says something along the lines of, "We're mortal men. We're not demagogues. We're not gods." and history will make whatever of us will be long dead by then.
Right.
So, I mean, if you look at the way the U.S. looks at our founding fathers, we've almost lifted them up to a hero, a legendary status. At least some people have.
Hmm.
So, uh, now we're talking about heroes. So why don't we start with heroes and then work our way up to the gods? In like how, because heroes could conceivably become gods depending on how they're portrayed in the myths that follow them. And your cat is trying to be like, hey, I'm a cat, follow me.
Very
Uh,
much.
but yeah, there's a lot of touchiness in this subject because you'll come across people even now that are still um, pantheistic that will belief in some of the uh, pantheistic gods groups. There are still people like that that are out there. I ran into one while I was at school last semester. Um, it's an interesting world, and people are not as you may look at the world and be like, well, there's three major religions. Well, okay, there's three major ones, but there's still the remnants of ancient religions, and there are other religions out there that we're kind of ignoring just by saying there's three major ones, because usually Hindu isn't included in that, and there's a lot of people that believe in that. So,
Yeah.
what to avoid offending anyone, we're going to probably offend everyone and just say we're going to look at everything if we reference it in modern day as mythology during this. So,
Which includes our own beliefs.
yes. So, with heroes, you can look at the way our history looks at. Your cat is just having a field day, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, with heroes, you can look at real world examples. How, depending on age, maturity of societies, things like that, some heroes can be viewed as villains. Usually, a hero would be viewed as a villain to somebody. Because heroes come out of conflict, and there wouldn't be a conflict if everybody believed the same way. So there's heroes. Heroes can be villains. Yeah, it's kind of a rough thing to say because people obviously, if you're looking at someone who you view as a hero, it's God. I keep seeing that tail.
Me too.
But yeah, heroes are subjective based on where you are in society. And from that, they have actions that they do, and those actions lead to them becoming immortalized, whether it's through history. I mean, we remember people like uh, we remember people, and my mind goes blank. We remember Plato, Aristotle. These are great thinkers, and I would not be surprised if their stories have been exaggerated out of proportion. Um, are there any uh, heroes that are real world for you that would be like ancient heroes?
Really. I never grew up with this idea of people being heroes. Not
Okay.
really. Outside of cartoons and comic books and crap like that. I never
Okay.
really saw too many people as heroes.
So you never looked at somebody as somebody who could stand up and be a symbol. Okay.
Not really.
So there's another perspective for writing. Um, so that kind of, I was hoping to build off of that, but oh well. uh, so you've got heroes, and I guess another way of looking at it is heroes have to come from somewhere. They're not always fictional heroes. They are based on an individual, and they could have their stories exaggerated, expanded upon, and that's when they kind of become a legend and a myth. So, uh, yeah, there's that. Then you have mythological, I guess, creatures. Because if you're a pantheistic and say following Greco-Roman pantheon, and you have the story of Hercules, is the Hydra, is the Hydra, or what was it, the Lion of Nemea? Was that the lion? Pretty sure it was.
Nemean lion or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Uh, are those? Those characters in and of themselves are mythological. They're myths. They're legendary, and the story of the hero is built around them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they're you're practically, if you're putting religion and myths together, you're almost building a second world inside your story.
Yeah. Hercules is actually a fine example of what we were talking about earlier, too. How much his myth and legends have changed throughout time and society. From what I understand, original writings and tellings, Hercules or Heracles, depending on which of the world you came from, um, was not much of a real hero. He was a jerk, complete asshole.
Like father, like son.
Yeah, and that changed a lot throughout history. To becoming a hero, to becoming even a childhood icon, Disney.
Yeah. Well, and then you have, in essence, stories like Dragon Ball Z,
Mhm.
Superman, which both you could argue are modern retellings of uh, a Hercules story. I mean, obviously, Dragon Ball Z also borrows some from Journey to the West. I believe that's right.
Yes.
I get West and East backwards. But,
Yeah. But I do believe the original Dragon Ball had more to pull from that than Z did.
yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of sharing of stories. If you look into uh, Greco-Roman and Nordic, there's some crossover between characters in that. There's honestly, Egyptian mythology is one of the few in the European theater that doesn't have a huge amount of crossover with the Greco-Roman. I mean, it's North African, but I mean, still the
Well, it's in that
Romans.
Mediterranean area.
Yeah, the Romans and the Egyptians were close. So, but and even when you go into Catholicism, one of the Roman gods at one point they were considering, I believe her name was Tyche, but uh, canonizing her as a saint just because there were so many people that still worshipped her. And it would have been easier to amalgamate those people into early Catholicism if they're like, yeah, the person you're worshiping was is recognized by our belief system as well, sort of thing.
Sounds awfully familiar.
Yep.
You have to wonder what holidays would have came out of that.
Well, she was the goddess of luck. So when you hear people talk about Tyche's child, that's somebody that's incredibly lucky.
Yeah, never heard that myself.
Oh, okay. Maybe you're just not that lucky.
Nope.
Anyway, we've talked a lot about kind of the more rambling with heroes, legends, things like that. But let's narrow it down and go on to religions. And because we brought up pantheistic, polytheistic, monotheistic, that sort of stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at the world based on different religions. And honestly, my best advice to anyone who's actively looking at having religion be a major part of their story, do some research on your own. That there's no way in just an hour or 2 hour long podcast that we're putting together we could even do more than scratch the surface.
No, not at all.
There's a lot to unpack in that, and so do some research yourself. Uh, Open your mind. Don't be careful in how you approach things. If you know somebody who has a different belief and they're willing to speak to you about it, you're willing to listen. That's a big thing, is you have to listen. Talk to them. Be open about it. That's the best way to learn and understand. But yes, polytheistic or pantheistic, you have a pantheon or multiple gods. Monotheistic, one. And we kind of lacked a good term for, and I'm sure there's one out there, but our Google foo was weak. But we called them totemistic, but that just doesn't feel right to me. But there's religions that don't so much have gods, more spirits. A lot of the indigenous religions to the Americas viewed, uh, you had they were more animal spirits, less so individual gods. There were a few that had pantheons. Um, I believe Shinto has uh, what they refer to as kamis. We've anglicized that into being gods, but they're really not. They're like incredibly powerful spirits of a local area. And what we perceive as gods in the Western view does not really match up with kami, at least from what I have read. So, but because there wasn't a anglicized word that matched kami, we just ended up calling them gods. So, um, but you've got the Shinto beliefs and modifications or iterations off of those. And again, where none of us are going to be experts in what we're talking about, so we could very easily be mention a couple things that we misunderstood, things like that. So,
Yep.
um, what where we're going with this is we're taking some broad examples of today and then talking how you might implement those in a story. So, um, one of the things we kind of touched on it was how a religion accepts another religion.
Yep.
We, I, early Christianity and Catholicism is a great example. I mean, I can't list all the different things that they co-opted from what they call pagan religions, but I mean, just other religions to try and make things more more acceptable and bring more people in under their umbrella. So, I mean, was it the Christmas tree and Halloween and a bunch of other stuff?
Yep.
Uh,
All of our major holidays.
yeah, let's see, like, uh, reason Easter is associated with the bunny rabbit is that is the time frame where you had, uh, well, I'm trying to remember what Eddie Izzard said, something about the rabbits for shagging. That's what it symbolizes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
Of
there's,
course, most of us know Christmas and Halloween well enough.
yeah, but then you've got different groups that have like their religious belief is antithetical to others, and they because of their beliefs, there's in essence a holy war between the two groups, for lack of a better description, because it's based on their religious beliefs that they feel they have to fight it. Um, and then other things with how you approach religion in your world would be how many religions are there and which ones are dominant. Do the dominant ones try and absorb or wipe out the weaker ones, things of that nature. So that's kind of our long rambling overview of this. So you want to go ahead and talk about myths, legends, religion in your world that you've been putting together?
Not just yet. I want to touch on something that you brought forward to me
Okay.
that would make a fine point here. The Mechanicus Adaptus. Their belief in the machine god, which technically makes them heretics. But they kind of say, what are you going to do with us?
Yeah, well, also I think this is Warhammer 40k for those that don't know. Um, at the early formation of the Imperium, the Emperor took on the role of the Omnissiah as well. So they are like the one group that they don't worship the Emperor as the Emperor, they worship him as the Omnissiah. So,
Yeah. But still, that's like a sect of a different religion within one, and they have to coexist.
Yeah,
I mean, they're basically forced to because without them, the Imperium doesn't have its massive weapons.
true.
But
And the other thing is, 40K is just weird, but the dragon that Saint George fought in the 40K universe, Saint George was the emperor, and the dragon was a Catan that is currently imprisoned deep in the underbellies of Mars. And some Adeptus Mechanicus believe that the dragon is the true Omnissiah.
oh, fun.
So yeah, there's that too.
Uh, but as far as my world goes, as I spoke about last time, I went ahead and just started grabbing the Nordic beliefs, yeah, the Nordic beliefs, Odin and all that, Yggdrasil, the tree, and kind of started chopping it up for my own use. And as far as gods in my world, the hidden truth, there are no gods. There's only one thing that's even close to a god, and that's the beast that slightly woke up and tore this world apart. But of course, your legends and your heroes grow into gods, and that's where you have things like your classic Oberon for the elves. Even though he was a mortal, that was way back when and now long dead, they believe him to be a godlike figure, and so on. You even have, what was that? Like the giants, Jotunheim. They cover more than just giants or other races that are there, but they literally believe in no god at all. They are God. There is nothing more powerful, more majestic than they are. You know. Let's see what else we got over here. I got too many notes.
Well, that's
I
a
went
good
little
thing.
notes on this. Yeah. In Helheim, where you find the tieflings and whatnot, they they praise to the Mother Hell, which is just a retelling of Asmodeus, and again, technically doesn't exist. They're just a mortal previously that done something powerful and became who they are. So in my world, religion's not going to play a huge part. It's mostly just going to be a passing thing, like we'd have in anything, like oh God save me, or whatever. It's not going to play a huge part. But I have started writing out certain things. Let's see. Ah, here you go, right here. The goblinoids of Niflheim. Niflheim. Uh, the god Orcus, I think, which I believe was the where Orcus got his name from in creation. That is an existing god within a pantheon that I don't even remember where I got it from.
Hmm.
Uh, but they basically, yeah, Orcus. So the name of gods, the idea of gods exists, but the only thing in this world that I'm building that exists as a god, as a legitimate godlike figure, is the slumbering beast at the core.
Okay, nifty.
What yours?
Well, mine is my world is heavily influenced by the 100 Years' War um, between France and Britain. Um, I'm having magic powered knights, so it kind of I feel like you need to have in that setting for. I feel that there needs to be um, paladins, crusaders, whatever you want to call them, the holy knights groups, and a lot of those were based on religious orders. Excuse me. And a lot of those were also tax collectors for nations that didn't believe in their gods. They just go over and say, "We're on a crusade to take your money." But I I feel like they belong in the world to some extent. Some of them could be more heroic, idealistic orders. Some of them could just be very pragmatic, and others could be abusive orders behind their religious beliefs. Um, whether the religions are true or not, I don't think it matters in my world because the story is too small for. I'm talking about a war between two major powers that involves the rest of the continent, but still, that is a fairly small story. Um, so, in the grand scheme, whether the religion is true or not doesn't really matter. Um, I'm thinking of having uh, you have heroes in there. Having a uh, the story of an Arthurian like character would be also feel somewhat natural. If you have magic, you could easily have the witches that live, or the whatever the group is that live off in the on the island in the mist that the great kings would go at their end of their life to visit and never return. Um, all those things could very easily be co-opted into this story and feel correct. Um, because of there being magic, I am thinking of leaning a little heavy into some of the worlds and the stories of um, the indigenous northern, um, well, the Celts and those groups that had stories like Oberon. Um, a lot of stuff that Ancient Magus's Bride leans heavily on. The spirits, things of that nature actually existing in the world to kind of give it more flavor, even if they're opposed to the primary belief structure that's there. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning more into those existing, but those aren't really. If they exist and they're an active part of the story, they're not really a religion so much because there is no faith it required in knowing how to deal with them because they're right there. So, um, yeah, I think that's kind of how I'm going to approach it. Blinded by the cat, but yeah, I'm also torn between having religious artifacts that actually have power or not
Mhm.
in the story because that does feel like it would be appropriate for that. So I'm mixed there on whether to include that or not. And if you have an opinion,
I love religious artifacts. Absolutely. Like, take the dwarves of my world. The dwarves of my world, and how I have it written here. Let's see, the dwarves, blah, blah, blah. Stout folk that firmly believe Yggdrasil itself is the god of all, not some pointy-eared elf, nor the core, nor a giant of whatever sign. So for them, their artifact, their god is the planet. The very stone, the very rock itself is an artifact to them, And you could easily throw in that there's a certain stone that lies in its crust that has a magical power due to how the magic, next episode, works.
Yeah. Okay. I do like the plug for next episode. So,
Yeah, I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
yes, you are. But I guess there's a few things that we need to kind of tie in now that we've kind of given our explanation on how religion can affect the world that you might not think of. One of the more obvious ones, at least to me, is curse phrases. If you don't have a hell, you can't say go to hell or any other insult that revolves around hell if there is no hell, because it makes no sense. Which I believe in one of the Star Wars movies, Han Solo tells somebody to go to hell. So there is a hell in Star Wars.
Yep. Yep. Uh, let's see. Some of the other ways that religion can define the way your world works. Um, it can really define what's the word? How people act on a regular basis. Etiquette. It can really define etiquette. Um, how people approach each other, how they treat each other. I mean, in even our own world, at one point, religion was law, absolute law. And that's still today defined a lot of how we speak and act in these days.
Yeah. I firmly believe that a lot of American culture and how our culture has evolved is heavily tied to um, the pilgrims. The I keep there's the Protestants and the early groups that came to this country. That kind of started uh, their more conservative beliefs. We still have some hang-ups related to those in modern society. But other things is, if you have a religion in your story where it's like D&D, since you're our D&D uh, person for this,
Yep.
if you have acts of the gods or people who have power due to their belief in the gods, like clerics, paladins, what have you, um, people are going to research that. That's just nature.
Yep.
And to reference Star Wars again, one of the things I personally like the midichlorians because it's a great world building device and ties into this to some extent. The Jedi and the way they behaved, I mean, they were a religious order, for lack of a better description. But at that point, during the Republic, during the end of what is considered the highest point in society in that universe, they had gone so far as to science the snot out of religion. They had figured out how the power of the Force, this, depending on which part of canon you look at, this power that had entities that lived in it and controlled aspects of it. They had figured out how that was working in people, and that was the midichlorians. and they had scienced that. And then, at some point, it was lost, and that's why it's never brought up again in the six movies that would have followed the after the fall of the Republic. Excuse me, lunch is not happy all of a sudden. But yeah, I mean that is an effect of your what your religion can have on a world, and I know there's a lot of people that disagree, but I think the midichlorians were a great piece of world building to show how the Republic looked at the Jedi. So, but then, I mean, you have religious schools. Whether your governments are theocracies, things of that nature as well are tied into it. So, did I skip anything? I know I glassed over a few things.
Oh, don't believe so. Let's see. Scrolling too far down. Um, no, we didn't really have a lot in the layout on this one. I suppose we could kind of follow up on the plug and kind of just touch the iceberg of the next setup.
Oh, well, we also have that group world that we're putting together.
Yeah, the co-op world, the city, in
Yeah.
between the yeah.
Oh, honestly, I kind of liked this idea in that you have the hidden world with all the magic and the goofiness. What if there were incredibly powerful beings on that side? I mean, you have that question of what makes a god always due to power, and you have a incredibly powerful being, whether it's a demon or some more positive creature. Um, on that side, that due to their power, whatever the barrier is, won't let them cross. But you have people on the other side that have a belief in this entity, and their belief allows that creature, that thing's power to cross over and act through them. Kind of this weird, well, if you look at 5e, kind of like a patron, but more like a cleric.
Yeah, yeah.
A warlock,
Uh,
more like a cleric.
do you recall the sort of a god game, sort of a RTS called Black and White?
Yes.
Uh, so you could have something of that nature between these two worlds. You have two existing pantheons. One being incredibly strict, the natural world, no magic, mostly tech, and then a more frivolous, more
Fey-like.
huh? Oh
Fey-like.
yeah, Fey-like, very Fey-like. They're very mischievous. They're silly. They like having fun and playing tricks. And their only way into each other's world is through their avatars, which are us. So when we pass over into the Fey world, some of the godlike ability that comes with them passes with them, kind of screwing around with the world, interfering with it.
Ooh, ooh. We could very easily pull on a Babylon 5 thread here, with one side being Vorlon-esque, and the other side being Shadow-esque.
Only instead, well, I couldn't even say only instead good and evil because neither the Vorlons nor the Shadow were good or evil.
Right.
Not really.
And that's why I chose them, is that
Yeah.
they both have. We could have the nature pantheon be more about preserving and protecting what's there,
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the which honestly that's almost a inversion of what normally, because normally nature is thought of as more chaotic. But and then you have the Fae, which in this route is the chaotic, just wanting to have fun and express freedom. So I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're, I mean, you could have famous, um, uh, I don't want to say avatars, but famous uh, embodiments, people that kind of embodied an ideal that would have did something for their god or gods
Right.
that are remembered for doing it. That they could be the heroes, they could be whatever, and that gets your one side of the doorway sees them as heroes, the other side sees them as villains. Because I'm sure the people on the Shadows side saw Mr. Morden as a good guy.
Oh, absolutely. Or at the very least, perfectly well-oiled tool.
Right. Tool. There you. I think both sides saw him as a tool.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I kind of like the way that falls together. And if you do that, that would mean like uh, the churches would. I mean, we already have kind of the black market, the mafia group that knows about the two sides of the door. Um, then we have the churches that know about it,
Hmm.
and they'd want to try and shut down the doors or get control over it. So you've got all sorts of infighting in that. I doubt the face side would want to maintain control of the doors. I think they just wouldn't care as long as people could do whatever they wanted.
And maybe that's another aspect of the world as a whole. The face says, "Yeah, sure, come on in. We don't care. Just have fun."
Yeah, and the other side is much more strict.
Exactly.
That I like that. That's yeah, and I mean, at that point you could have whether the city get. I would imagine that the city government, like the mayor and people like that, since this is city sized, would know about this.
Yeah, and their job would be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, all I can think of is in the Harry Potter series, that time where there's a point in one of the books where there's a new prime minister in England, and he's finished visiting his cabinet group or whatever, and he's sitting there to relax, and the Minister of Magic appears in his office, and he's like, "Yeah, this is what's going on. I'm kind of in charge of this whole group of mysterious people that are very powerful and can kill everyone without so much of a thought. Good luck." It's like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, I can see that the government of that is going to have a lot of fun, but that's another episode much further down the line.
oh yes.
So, um, yeah, let me it. I want to apologize since I forgot to do this earlier, but I shush 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 YouTube shush. Um, where is my channel? Yeah, I'm bringing up my videos to see if we had any comments on the previous episode. Nope, just Z telling me my camera was fine. I do think the picture on that camera was better, but
Yeah,
it
it
was.
was.
This one hasn't flaked out like the previous one, so. But yeah, if you have any questions about what we covered, any thoughts to add to it, go ahead, leave them in the comments below. We'll talk about them next time. And yeah, I think we're done. Unless you got anything else to add.
Not at the moment, but I'm looking at our next episode outline, and that one's going to be fun.
Yes, it's a fairly heavy one. We're going to be talking about magic. So, if you have any questions about the magic system that you'd like to preempt and have us talk about directly, go ahead and leave those below as well. Yeah, I think that's everything. Oh, wait, I started to say I wanted to apologize for the gap in these going up because one, I got overwhelmed with finals. I'm done with school. I've graduated. All that funness. Um, and then on the day of graduation, my computer went down, and it came up. But I got it working. What 2 days ago?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Was it 2 days ago?
Yeah,
Oh, it was
it was.
yesterday.
Yeah, it was Friday. But yeah. Um, Yay! I've got my computer back up, so hopefully I'll have these out more on a regular basis. Thank you all for stopping by, and I guess we'll see you next time. So until then, bye
Good. It ain't nighttime yet, but good night, everybody.
bye.